June 2022 to address critical audit findings and recommendations touching on the register of voters upon receiving the preliminary report on the 2nd of June this year. The Commission is pleased to announce that the audit of the register of voters has now been completed by KPMG, and the final report submitted to the Commission on the 18th of June 2022. The Commission, based on preliminary findings shared by KPMG, implemented some of the recommendations, and it's in the course of finalizing the few remaining recommendations. As the Commission briefs the country today, it's equally pleased to announce that the total number of registered voters is 22,120,458, and the number of polling stations stands at 46,232 for purposes of the general elections slated for 9th of August this year. In accordance with the Elections Act, the Commission will also submit the report to the National Assembly and the Senate. In the spirit of transparency and commitment to public confidence in the register of voters and electoral processes, the Commission now provides this briefing to inform Kenyans of the summary findings and actions taken to address issues identified from the audit. There are key figures we want to share with the country. In 2017, we had 40,883 polling stations, and for 2022, we shall have 46,232 polling stations. This gives a growth rate of 13.08%. The final number of registered voters in 2017, we had 19,611,423 registered voters, and 2022, we have 22,120,458. The data available from Kenya National Bureau of Statistics on eligible voters in 2017, KNBS had 25,212,096 as identified as eligible voters, and in 2022, the data obtained from KNBS was 27,857,598. And we had from the National Registration Bureau of Persons Issued with IDs, 2017, we had 25,323,059, and 2022, 29,566,678, representing 16.76% growth. So those are figures which, if you look at now the enrollment rate in 2017, the registered voters compared to eligible voters, that's registered voters by IEBC compared to eligible voters by KNBS, in 2017 represented 77.78%, and 2022 79.41%. And registered voters by IEBC compared to IDs issued by NRB, 2017 represents 77.44%, and 2022 74.82%. There's also been a noticeable increase among prisoners and diaspora. In prisons, 2017 we had 5,182 registered voters. In 2022, 7,483. And diaspora, 2017, 4,223. In 2022, 10,444. So those are the figures which are key. Part of the process of the audit was by KPMG was to engage stakeholders, and this is important because stakeholder engagement is key. And part of the stakeholders' engaged by KPMG during the audit are government representatives responsible for maintaining and providing reference data required for the audit. This includes the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, National Registration Bureau, Department of Immigration Services, and Civil Registry Services. Aspirants and political parties were also engaged in conjunction with the Political Parties Liaison Committee, and aspirants running independently or through registered political parties were engaged in a meeting held somewhere in Nakuru. The public and media also engaged. We had an engagement and a representative from KPMG here on the 8th of June this year. And these briefings covered the state of the register, the state of the audit, highlights of the report, and the next steps towards certification of the register. I will now highlight a few. I'll highlight 7 recommendations made by the audit. And these are, number 1, there were findings on the process and system controls. Processes and system controls at the IEBC. KPMG audit has identified a number of issues that can enhance accuracy and credibility in the register of voters. The audit has also recommended that IEBC gives priority to implementing a medium-term transformational program to ensure that it has systems, capacity, and structure that will enable its role in anticipation of a fresh registration process before the 2027 general election. In accordance with the recommendation, the Commission will review its registration process with a view to strengthening the same by developing and implementing, among others, the following: automated data input validation controls, or explore possibility of using integrated population registration systems, that's IPRS, database in enrollment processes, having pre-numbered registration forms and digitizing the same, periodic comparison of the register of voters with the relevant government agencies, logging and monitoring of system user activities. There was also a finding on transfer of voters. KPMG analyzed the full register and noted that there were transfer transactions processed between 2017 general election and May 2022. The analysis of those transfers identified several constituencies and counties showing trends of abnormal voter transfers having been processed in the register of voters. A breakdown of all transfers processed in the register to and from the 47 counties, 290 constituencies, diaspora, and prison was shared, and together with the Commission, the audit identified the specific counties which had abnormal trends and voter transfer numbers. The objective of the joint exercise was to ascertain the accuracy and validity of those transfers and to enable quick corrective action. By the time of issuance of the final KPMG report, transactions in areas identified as having unusual transfer records had been reversed. In addition, the Commission undertook a parallel exercise of collecting all the Form Cs across the country and capturing them in a database to quality check the register of voters and take appropriate action. The other finding is on the registered voters biometric review. In the review of the registered voters biometric, the audit assessed the completeness, biometric quality, and uniqueness of the register of voters. The tests carried out by KPMG confirmed that the fingerprint images captured by the Commission were good and that the deduplication system was working as expected. The other finding was on exceptions generated from the register of voters. KPMG carried out tests on the register of voters, including comparison with the National Registration Bureau, the Directorate of Immigration Services, and the Civil Registry Services to sustain its accuracy, and the results of these tests were provided to the Commission for validation to confirm whether they relate to legitimate voters. The results will be explained to you. I'll invite Mr. Marjan to take you through the results which were identified. Database security and infrastructure controls. That was another finding. As part of the audit, KPMG reviewed controls over the database and infrastructure control and made recommendations on strengthening controls over application, database, and infrastructure to ensure security of the register of voters. The Commission has already commenced implementation of KPMG recommendations with the third parties providing the Commission with IT support. This includes application of least privilege principle by disabling all user access rights and only giving them privileges needed to complete their specific tasks. Another finding was on inclusiveness of the register of voters. KPMG carried out an assessment on the inclusiveness of the register of voters with regard to age, gender, persons living with disabilities, and geographic distribution. Further, KPMG reviewed inclusiveness processes, policies, infrastructure, and mechanisms implemented by the Commission to enhance inclusiveness of the register of voters. The following statistics obtained from this assessment: women represent 49.12% of registered voters, and men represent 50.88% of the total voters, demonstrating that women are still underrepresented in the register of voters. The number of youth 18 to 34 years old registered to vote in 2022 stands at 39.84%, which is a decline of 5.27% against what we had in 2017. Further analysis of youth enrollment statistics show that the number of registered female youth has declined by 7.75% in the period 2017 to 2022, while male youth enrollment has declined by 2.89%. The enrollment of PWDs stands at 18.94% of the eligible voting population. Registration of Kenyans living in diaspora constitutes 0.05% of the register of voters. The Commission has invested all its efforts to address majority of pre-election day issues identified from the audit, and at the same time, we are also carrying out our election operation plan. The Commission is grateful to KPMG for the services provided in the audit of the register of voters. The Commission has on the exceptions and also on the action plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
You need my face.
To avoid, Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As you may have noticed that in the previous media briefing, the chairman had indicated that there are several exceptions that were generated by KPMG. And these exceptions were generated by comparing the register of voters with the relevant agencies, including the National Registration Bureau, the Civil Registry Services, Department of Immigration, and the outcome of that was there were several groups. In particular, there were 5 categories of exceptions that were identified. And the first one is when our register of voter was compared with the National Registration Bureau and Department of Immigration Services, there were 226,143 records that do not match with the NRB and DIS, with the National Registration Bureau and Department of Immigration Services, meaning that there were IDs and passport reference documents that matched with the NRB and DIS, but the names recorded in our database and the other database were not agreeing. The ID numbers were agreeing, but the names were not agreeing. So there were 26,143 as at 2nd June 2022. By the time when we issued the final audit, we had resolved 24%, and that is 107. That translated to balance of 172,929. The reason for not completing the exercise is because it requires investigation, and also because the IDs could be as a result of transposition or transcription errors. The registration assistants or clerks, during the time when they were capturing the details of national IDs and also the passport numbers, there is a possibility that the numbers were captured incorrectly because of transposition and transcription errors. So when you compare with the NRB or the Department of Immigration Services, it was possible that you may have actually compared wrong ID with the right ID at the National Registration Bureau. And therefore, the right thing is to do proper investigations, because it is likely that you are going to balkanize a legitimate voter because of such discrepancies. So we said then the balance of those who are remaining that we were unable to complete is that during election, we are going to use biometric identification of the voters, and therefore it will hedge against the risk of having somebody who is legitimate appearing at the polling station and they are denied to vote. So that is the decision that the Commission took. The second category was for individuals who have registered more than once and with both IDs and passport numbers. Individuals who have registered more than once with ID and passport numbers. Ideally, if I were to classify them, I'll say these are actually crooks. That is what I would say, because how would you register with a national ID and again register with a passport number? But it is also possible that some may have actually forgotten, because majority of them are actually coming all the way from 2012 when the register of voter was actually being created. Out of that, we have actually managed to handle 59% of that. So there were 4,757 records, but we handled 59% of that. And the remaining 1,928 was still actually in the registration, in the register of voters. What you are saying is that after this exercise, we will hand over these records, 4,757, to the relevant agencies for further investigation to understand why people are registering more than once with the different documents, so that proper charges can be preferred against them. Then we have got the third categories where the records within the register of voters had duplicates or blank IDs / passport reference numbers. There are situations whereby the registration clerks enroll people without completing the ID area, or maybe the ID phase. There's a place for actually recording ID, and there's a place for recording passport number. So when they were handling this, there are those that actually had blank ID numbers or blank passport numbers. And those ones were actually 481,711. By the time of issuance of the audit report, the number had reduced to 144,674. We actually dealt 70% of these items were actually closed. But in order to ensure that legitimate voters are not turned away during election, the use of biometric identification during election will mitigate against any risk of a legitimate voter going to vote, and also legitimate voters being prevented from going to vote. This measure will actually take place during the election day. Then the other categories was records with invalid documents, reference numbers as recorded in the register of voters when compared with the National Registration Bureau and Department of Immigration Services. In particular, we had 12,435 invalid passports and 151,834 invalid IDs. When you talk about invalid, we mean that ID should have numbers only. And also, the length of the ID can either be 7 or 8 digits. For those old generation IDs, they are actually 7 digits. For the new ones are actually 8 digits. So we had IDs that were less than 7 and IDs that maybe were also more than 8. So meaning when you compare them with the Registration Bureau, those ID do not match because they actually don't fall within those categories. And also, we had, for invalid passports, I think the issue is about the Department of Immigration Services not maintaining a record of the old generation passports. And therefore, they were captured as exception by the KPMG report. So those ones were actually validated and they were found to be correct. So the only ones that had challenges were the ones that were having either fewer than 7 digits and also more than 8 digits. So those ones were actually the ones that were remaining. And 11% of those were actually corrected because it required now the registration officer to call the voters and also to go back and to confirm with the documents that are actually in our custody. So that requires a lot of time. So by the time we were acting on this recommendation, up to the time when we received the report, only 11% had been acted upon. So, but again, also the risk of deciding, for example, to eliminate all of them is to say that there may be legitimate voters who may come during the election to present themselves, and then we tell them that you are not part of this exercise. So to hedge against that, we actually decided that because we are going to use biometric identification during the election, we will actually be able to positively identify those who are legitimate, and the ones that are illegitimate will actually be prevented from participating in the election. The last category was the category of deceased person. On 2nd of June, we had 246,465 deceased voters appearing in the register of voter, and this was as a result of analysis between our register of voter and that of civil register services. By the time of issuance of the audit report on 16th June 2022, all of them had actually been deactivated, and therefore they will not participate, if at all they are there, that they will be able to rise. They will not participate in the election because their records are actually not there. So we actually managed to act on 100% on this category. So this is what the chairman had requested me to present. And okay, the last category is on the, not category per se, the last on implementation matrix, we had 4 categories of recommendations that had been given to us by KPMG, and they are categorized into 2. That is those that should be handled before the election day and those that should be handled after election. In particular, when you are carrying out new registration, what are the things that you should pay attention to? So there were 4 categories. One of the categories is voter registration, transfer, and voter detail updates processes. There were 3 recommendations that we are supposed to handle before the election day, and 6 recommendations that we are supposed to handle in the medium term, that is after the election. Meaning that these are the ones that we should pay attention to as we are now designing new ways of actually re-enrolling people, because you are aware that immediately after the election there is going to be boundaries delimitation, and we'll actually come up with a new register for the purpose of having new records of voters or registered voters in various electorates. So total for that category was 9, but 3 are for before the election day and 6 after the election. Then we have recommendations related to register of voter database and system controls. There were 11 that are supposed to be handled before the election, pre-election day, and there were 6 related to medium term, totaling to 17 recommendations. For data and biometric analysis, we had 5 pre-election day recommendations, and we had 22 medium term recommendations, totaling to 27. Then for assessing inclusiveness in the register of voters, this is ensuring that different categories, either marginalized, women, youth, are actually represented fully. We had 0 for pre-election day, but we had 9 for medium term, giving us a total of 9. So as indicated by the chairman and also myself in terms of the exceptions that were managed, most of this pre-election day had actually been resolved, and there are only few that are remaining. Like we said, the issues regarding transfers were basically handled to satisfaction of the commission. The issue of access control, we have already indicated that access rights have actually been withdrawn, and we are using least privilege principles to assign passwords based on one's tasks, meaning that you are not going to be given excessive access rights. There are also others which were related to policy. What does the policy say regarding, for example, management of access rights? For example, the password should have certain number of characters. The password also should be deactivated after a certain period of time. This is for the system, because for Active Directories, those policies have been implemented. But at system level, there are some mismatch between the policy and what has been implemented. So what we are doing is to ensure that the policy and what has been implemented basically agrees. On the issue of data and biometrics, I think the issues of comparison of our database with other agencies is something that we are going to pay attention to in future. But we have also indicated that to minimize keystroke errors, we are going to actually use, of course, with a discussion with the IPRS. It's easy when you just key in somebody's ID, when they present to you their ID, and you enter the ID number in the system, then it actually retrieves the information from IPRS, and that information is basically populated in the register of voter. That way you are going to eliminate completely the issue of keystroke errors. We also want to discuss with the civil registry. This is on their part, not our part. But also we want them to also use IPRS to populate their deceased voter. When somebody comes with a record that they have lost their deceased ones, all they need to do is just to enter the ID numbers in the IPRS and retrieve the records, and now have it populated in the CRS database. So it's easy, and therefore the issue of keystroke errors will not arise. We can be able to match our records favorably and ensure that our register of voter is actually complete and accurate all the time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions on that? I think we shall share with you the briefing shortly after this. The communication team will share with you the briefing. Yes.
Yes, Chairman. My name is Tom Wangi. I'm the Chief Legal Advisor of the Auditor Company. I have two questions. One, now that this audit has been done, when do we expect that you will have attended to every issue that deals with the integrity of this register, and that we can be sure that the register that you will now have is what will be final? And how can we and the public access that register that will have attended to all the issues that have been raised by KPMG? But I want to ask another question on something that you had said before, where you said that you're not going to have any physical registers at the polling station. I am wondering, do you have any other redundancy that you have designed in case of failure of technology on that day? I ask this knowing very well that this has happened before. Secondly, how do you defend your decision not to have physical registers in the light of the legal obligation of the Commission to have a complementary system for identification of voters? And how has the Commission attended to the requirement of the Elections Act that you must have a complementary system? And thirdly, I am concerned what would happen on voting day if there was a failure of technology, as has happened before, and you have voting going on in some parts of the country and voting not taking off in other parts of the country, and you do not have physical registers, so it is impossible to start any voting in any area, and the catastrophic effects that would have. Has the Commission thought of those possibilities, and how catastrophic that would be, and what are the safeguards that you have put in place for that?
I think we can deal with that first, or? and add more. Who wants to answer this? I'll throw them around this time. But when will the register be complete? We have given you the figure today of 22,120,458. That is the register. That's the number of registered voters who will participate in the 2022 elections. The Commission promised to certify and gazette the register of voters. I think after this briefing, the Commission will meet and certify the register, and the register will be gazetted. So that will be done. I believe the gazette notice then should be available tomorrow or day after. So there's no other register, only that one register. Marjan, let me ask you to say something about the physical register versus the biometric, the digital register, and what happens on polling day if technology fails.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've been asked to answer the question with regard to use of physical register. Not using physical register in the 2022 general election. And at the same time, as addressing that question, we also look at what safeguards does the Commission has in case there's a technological failure. First of all, the reason why the Commission has decided to use a digital register as opposed to physical register is to prevent certain malpractices that were actually there before. And this basically is determining the number of registered voters as you are coming to vote. Using of the physical register actually involved deleting the name of those people who have voted. And the register, physical register, had all information regarding the voters in that particular polling station. And therefore, that practice of deleting to confirm who has actually voted, which is also being carried out by the KIMS kit, it was also being done physically by using the register of voter. So in strongholds, it is possible that the ones that are remaining, after a certain period of time, they start now entering the ID into the KIMS system, and they give this and give their would-be voters ballot papers for them to go and actually cast. And this malpractice is what the Commission is trying to curb. Whereby, let's say when it reaches 4 in the evening, and then you look at who has voted, who has not voted, you can see the ID numbers of those who have not voted, and then you start now entering the same into the KIMS kit, and therefore will be allowing illegitimate people to vote. This is first of all, what is the reason? This is the reason why the Commission has taken this. Now, the other question is, how are you going to ensure business continuity just in case there is a failure in the technology? One is that the design of the KIMS kit is that it will use SD card, which is going to have information regarding the voters for that specific polling station. So the way we have organized is that we'll have backups KIMS kit in each and every ward. We'll have more than 4 backup kits, because right away we have about the 44,000 that we used during the 2017 election, plus 14,000 that we have 14,100 we have bought. So this actually gives you a lot of KIMS kit that can be used for the purpose of, in case a kit fails, then we can now just be able to replace it with a working kit. And all we need to do is basically just to remove the SD card from the KIMS kit and insert it in the new KIMS kit. That way, the presiding officer will not have visibility of who has not voted, because the KIMS kit will only show the numbers of who has voted. the count of the people who have voted, but they will not have visibility of who has voted, who has not voted, and what is the ID number, so that they can play games. So this is meant for good intention, not for any bad intention. It is basically to prevent malpractice that actually has been observed before. And so I've explained that there's going to be, and then also this KIMS kit is going to be connected to the network through the GSM, because at the end of the period, it is going to be used for the purpose of transmitting the results to the constituency as well as the National Talent Center. So this KIMS kit, as it is being used